The airport was bustling with travelers, the sound of rolling suitcases blending with overhead announcements. Mr. Carter, a tall black man in his 40s, walked toward the security checkpoint, dressed in a tailored yet casual outfit. He carried himself with quiet confidence, accustomed to moving through spaces like this without issue. As he approached the TSA line, his sharp eyes took in the surroundings, noting the efficiency, or lack thereof, of the security process. He had invested millions into this airport, ensuring it was one of the best in the country. Today, however, he was just another traveler in line. Officer Reynolds, a middle-aged TSA agent with a stern face, noticed Carter immediately. Something about the way the man walked, his presence, made Reynolds' lips press into a thin line. He had seen enough in his years on the job to know who belonged and who didn't, at least in his mind. As Carter approached the checkpoint, Reynolds stepped forward, his voice sharp and authoritative. "Sir, hold on, step out of the line." Carter frowned but complied, stopping just before the conveyor belt. "Is there a problem?" Reynolds crossed his arms. "What's your business here?" Carter raised an eyebrow. "I'm catching a flight." Reynolds scoffed. "You sure about that? This is a restricted area. You can't just wander around here without a valid ticket." Carter exhaled, keeping his composure. He had dealt with these kinds of assumptions before, but it never ceased to be frustrating. "I have a ticket." "Let me see it," Reynolds demanded, his tone laced with suspicion. Carter reached into his jacket pocket, producing a sleek VIP access card. He handed it over without a word. Reynolds barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "This doesn't mean anything to me. I need to see a real boarding pass. If you don't have one, you need to step aside." A few travelers in line paused, watching the exchange. Some looked uncomfortable, recognizing the tone in Reynolds' voice. Others simply turned away, pretending not to notice. Carter, however, stood his ground. "Are you asking every passenger for additional proof, or just me?" Reynolds' expression hardened. "I don't like your attitude. Either show me a valid ticket or I'll have you escorted out." Carter stared at him, debating whether to escalate the situation. He wasn't one to throw his weight around unnecessarily, but there was a line between patience and allowing disrespect to go unchecked. The tension thickened as Reynolds' fingers twitched near his radio, ready to call for backup. Carter knew that in a different time, a different place, this could have ended much worse, but today he had an advantage the agent didn't know about, and soon that advantage would change everything. Carter kept his expression neutral, though inside frustration simmered. He had encountered people like Reynolds before, small men with a little authority, using it to make others feel powerless. But today, Reynolds had picked the wrong person. Without a word, Carter reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out another card, a black and gold VIP access badge, one that only the highest-level executives associated with the airport possessed. He held it out between two fingers, watching Reynolds' reaction. Reynolds glanced at it briefly, then let out a short, dismissive laugh. "I don't know what this is supposed to be, but like I said, that doesn't mean anything to me." Carter tilted his head slightly, his patience wearing thin. "It means I have full clearance in this airport," he said calmly. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. "Yeah, and I have full authority to decide who goes through this checkpoint and who doesn't. And right now you're not going anywhere." A few murmurs spread through the line as passengers continued to watch the exchange unfold. Some shook their heads, recognizing the blatant discrimination taking place. Others looked uncomfortable, pretending to be focused on their phones or their luggage. Carter remained still, his gaze locked onto Reynolds, who seemed determined to make this difficult. Then before Carter could say another word, a voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Carter, I'm so sorry for the delay, sir." A man in a navy blue suit hurried over, his airport ID badge swinging from his lanyard. It was Daniel Harrington, the airport's general manager. His face was red with embarrassment as he reached Carter's side. Reynolds blinked, confusion flickering across his face. "I hope there's not an issue here." Harrington said quickly, giving Reynolds a sharp look before turning back to Carter with a forced smile. "We weren't expecting you today, but of course, you have full access." Reynolds' jaw tightened as he looked between the two men. "Wait, what?" Carter gave a slow, knowing smile. "Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget to introduce myself?" He extended a hand toward Reynolds, who didn't take it. "I'm Jonathan Carter, owner and majority stakeholder of this airport." Reynolds visibly paled, his posture stiffening. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, the weight of his mistake settling in. Around them, the onlookers whispered, some shaking their heads at Reynolds while others stole glances at Carter, suddenly realizing who he was. Harrington cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, I sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. I assure you, it will be handled immediately." He shot Reynolds a glare, his meaning clear. Carter studied Reynolds for a moment longer before tucking his VIP card back into his jacket. "Handled? Good. Because what just happened here is unacceptable. And I don't tolerate unacceptable in my airport." Reynolds swallowed hard, realizing just how badly he had screwed up. Reynolds stood frozen, his face drained of color as the realization of his mistake sank in. The bustling airport around them seemed distant, the low hum of conversations and rolling suitcases fading into the background. His fingers twitched slightly at his sides, and he struggled to form a response, but the weight of what he had just done pressed down on him like an iron fist. Carter held his gaze, calm but unyielding. There was no need for anger. His mere presence was enough. "So," he said, voice steady, "let me get this straight. You saw me walk in, assumed I didn't belong, and decided to flex your authority without cause." Reynolds swallowed. "I was just doing my job," he muttered, his voice quieter now, no longer carrying the same arrogant confidence as before. Carter let out a short, humorless chuckle. "Your job? Your job is to ensure security, not to discriminate against paying passengers, or in this case, the owner of the damn airport." Harrington, still standing beside them, cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mr. Carter, I can assure you, this is not how we train our TSA officers. This kind of behavior is unacceptable." He turned sharply to Reynolds. "You do realize who you just harassed, don't you?" Reynolds nodded stiffly, his mouth opening and closing like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Carter continued, his voice firm. "This isn't just about me. How many others have you treated like this? How many people have you dismissed, humiliated or delayed just because of your own biases?" He gestured to the passengers still watching from the line. Some of them nodded subtly, confirming they'd seen this kind of thing before. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. I didn't mean anything by it," he mumbled, but the excuse fell flat. Carter sighed, his frustration evident. "Intent doesn't matter when the impact is the same, and frankly, I don't think I want someone like you representing my airport." Harrington took the cue immediately. He turned to Reynolds, his expression cold. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of duty. You can collect your things and leave." Reynolds' eyes widened. "Wait, what, sir? There's nothing else to say," Harrington cut in sharply. "We can't afford employees who let personal prejudice interfere with their responsibilities. Turn in your badge and go." Security officers who had been lingering nearby stepped forward. The once confident Reynolds now looked small, his shoulders sagging as he realized there was no arguing his way out of this. He hesitated for a second before unclipping his TSA badge and handing it over. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, his footsteps heavy against the polished airport floor. Carter watched him go, exhaling slowly. He hadn't come here looking for a confrontation, but he also wasn't the type to let things slide. As a businessman, he understood that leadership meant holding people accountable, and today, accountability had been served. Harrington, looking both embarrassed and relieved, turned back to Carter. "Again, sir, I truly apologize. This won't happen again." Carter gave him a small nod. "See that it doesn't, and while you're at it, take a hard look at your hiring and training practices. One bad employee is a reflection of a much bigger problem." With that, he adjusted his jacket and turned toward security, stepping forward with the effortless confidence of a man who belonged, because he always had. The crowd in line slowly began moving again, whispers of the moment lingering in the air. But Carter was done with it. He had a flight to catch and more important things ahead.